Anandamayi, I'm very pleased to see you here.
Tulasi?
I may be telling you things that you've already heard or already know, but I will say more than those things, and therefore maybe it'll be worth listening to me. Dihika was the name of the first school Master began. I think it was in West Bengal. And he started with about 7 students. It was not much of a beginning, but after a year, they had had so much malaria and different troubles there that he went to the Maharaja of Pashim Bazar and asked him if he could give him some property that would be more suitable in a better and more salubrious climate. And the Maharaja decided that he wanted, since this was a spiritual school, to make sure that this young Swami Yogananda knew what he was talking about when it came to spiritual things. And so he invited several pundits to come and quiz him. And Master, when he entered the room, said that I could see they were all ready for a theological bullfight. And so he said, let's not talk about things that we have learned by rote in the scriptures. Let's talk about what we have realized. He said, in the scriptures you all know that they speak of Mon, Buddhi, Ahankar, Chitta, and they say that these 4 aspects of the mind have their physical counterpart, but they don't say where their physical counterpart is. Can you tell me what those places are? Well, of course he took the wind out of their sails completely because they didn't know. And so he said, well, Mon is here, Buddhi is here, Ahankar is here, Chitta is here. And these are the 3 aspects of consciousness. But Patanjali describes Chitta as the main thing. He speaks of the realization that is attained through yoga. He says, Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the neutralization of the vrittis. Vrittis literally means whirlpool. And these things that draw the impressions, desires, everything to a focus in yourself, those are what we have to eliminate. Mon, Sri Yukteswar explained to Master the difference between these 3 stages of the mind. Mon, he said, is like you have a mirror with a horse reflected in the mirror. And the mind sees the horse, but it's blind. This is why Dhritarashtra is called the blind king, because the blind mind that doesn't discriminate, it doesn't know, it just receives impressions. And the whole Mahabharata is a very deep allegory. And this is the meaning of Dhritarashtra. Sanjaya is introspection and so on. I'm not going to talk about the Mahabharata today, but the intellect then comes into the picture. And you know, when people try to think deeply, reason deeply, they tend to knit their eyebrows. It's automatic. This is where that quality of intellect, discrimination, discernment, it says, oh, that's a horse. Then the ego comes in, and the ahankar, and it says, oh, that's my horse. And you'll notice that the ego in people, when they feel very flattered, for example, or people who are singers and like to show off their voices, this is where your ego is centered. And a very interesting thing is that Ramana Maharshi quite rightly said that the I is centered here, but that's a different I. As Yogananda in his autobiography of Yogi, he describes in the chapter on cosmic consciousness, he says, I cognize the center of this empyrean, this vast universe, as a point of intuitive perception in my own heart. And that too is a fascinating thought, because if we realize it, back from the days when they thought that everything was centered in the world, science has shown us that there's no center. Science has shown us that there are 100 billion galaxies, and who's counting? And yet now we've come to understand that the universe is center everywhere, circumference nowhere. And so from thinking that the universe is centered in the world, it's actually centered in your own heart. And Yogananda cognized the center of it in his own heart. Now this part is what is known as chitta, feeling. And the feeling part of the human being is the most important aspect of consciousness. Without feeling, there would not be awareness, really. But an interesting thing is that when the ego says, "That's my horse," then chitta comes in and says, "Oh, how happy I am to see my horse." That's the final, you might say, the final nail driven into the board here. And so we have to understand that intellect alone is not enough. There are people nowadays talking, I don't know, I haven't heard it for a few years now, but maybe they're still talking about it, thinking about computers' rights. It's ridiculous to think that computers will be someday intelligent enough to have rights. But what makes it obviously impossible, I remember watching that movie, 2001 Space Odyssey. The best part of the movie when it flashed intermission on the screen. And we could leave. It was too ridiculous. The only human people in that movie, the only human person in that movie was Al, the robot. We have to understand that, yes, instruments can be intelligent. Yes, you use computers to help you solve problems for you. You use it all the time with your calculators and so on. I did see on television one time a woman who was an Indian woman who was extremely intuitive, and you could give her any number multiplied by any number. She had I think there was one that was multiplying a number with 16 digits with another one of 13 digits or something like that. And she instantly knew the right answer. And one time they had her in a contest with a computer. And the computer said, "No, that's not the right number." She said, "And the computer's wrong." And they thought this was ego on her part, but they checked it out and she was right. The computer was wrong. It had somehow perhaps been programmed wrong, I don't know. But the thing is that real intelligence is not the intellect, and this is a great mistake that people make. Real intelligence is intuition, is feeling. And this is why I said in my talk yesterday that the future in this Hatha Yoga will be much more women coming to the fore, because women's nature is intuitive. You find sometimes a man will take on a partner, and his wife will say, "Don't take him on." He says, "I don't trust him." "What do you mean? He's got all the credentials." But 2 years down the road, he runs away with all the money. Women have a feeling for these things. Men have a feeling, intuition too, when it comes to organization and so on. I can see a proposed development for Ananda, and I can tell instantly, miles down the road, years down the road, what would be the results of that choice. But generally speaking, especially where people are concerned, men better trust your wives. They tend to be right. So the important thing is too, that our education today is entirely intellect-oriented. And what we need to do is help children to develop their intuition. And how do you develop intuition? Intuition is feeling, but it isn't emotion. You have to be able to raise your feeling to a level where it's on a spiritual level. Now, in our schools, I know Master started this Ranchi school. It became very popular. Within a couple of years, they were having enrollments far beyond their own ability to handle. But when he came to America, he got Mount Washington, which is now the headquarters of his work there. And he first of all, he wanted to start a school. Well, obviously it was not the right move. Obviously he would know that. What he did, he also tried to start communities, and people weren't ready to start communities yet. They weren't ready to live in communities. Why did he do these things that seemed to have failed? Only because he knew he wouldn't live long enough. And he knew that he had to start this to show people this was his vision for the future. And so, during his lifetime, he quickly had to give up the school, because after all, if you're going to have children in a school, the parents have to be convinced to send their children to the school. And they weren't ready for that yet. If you're going to have communities, you have to have people ready to live cooperatively. And when he tried to start them, it was just when America was coming out from under the Great Depression, which, by the way, is going to become much greater now. But that's another subject. But we're really on the brink of a great disaster. Anyway, the communities, he wasn't able to do it. But he started it knowing that somebody would start it. And I was present in 1949 at a talk at the Beverly Hills Garden Party. And he talked more forcefully, and it was the most powerful lecture I have ever heard. It was really quite amazing, the force with which he said, "I am sowing my thoughts in the ether, and my words shall not die." And he spoke with that kind of power, saying that thousands of youths must go north, south, east, west, everywhere to start these communities. It was an interesting occasion, because it was a garden party. And you expect the person who was sort of the guest of honor at a garden party to thank his hostess and his gracious, this thing and that thing, and thank you very much. Oh no, he talked the way God wanted him to talk, and he didn't care of anything else. But there must have been about 800 Hollywood celebrities and people, Beverly Hills is a very rich area of Los Angeles, and so very wealthy people and prominent people and so on. I was the only person there who heard him. I mean, they heard his words. I heard him with my heart. And I vowed that I would do what I could to start communities. Well, I have to admit, I had a head start, because when I was 15 years old, I decided I wanted to start a community. And so I was able, in the years to come, to begin a community. And as a very important part of this community, we didn't want the children going out, we wanted them to learn our principles. And so we now have schools in Palo Alto, Portland, Seattle, and Ananda village, Assisi in Italy, and now we're going to have one here in India. And I think maybe, in a way, the most important school that we will have will be here in India. Not schools, schools. We need to introduce this principle. Now when I read the newspaper, which I do, cursorily, but I sort of manage to struggle through it, I find myself amazed at how many children commit suicide. It's just painful to think. I think one of the main reasons that children commit suicide is that we're giving them a world that doesn't have any reason, any ideals, any sense. We're giving them a world in which God doesn't seem to exist. And I wrote a book on this. This happened a month before I was put out of SRF and had to work on my own, which was the greatest blessing that ever happened to me. But it was in SPAN. I think that's the USIS, US Information Service magazine here in Delhi. And it was by the head of the philosophy department of MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And he said that most philosophers today say that life has no meaning, there is no purpose to anything, that all moral values are relative, that there are no real values, it's just what you feel is right is fine, that there is no God, there is no eternity, there is no nothing. And I knew the answer to all those points, and I thought I would love to write a book on that subject. I spent the next 16 years researching it. It was a very unpalatable subject for me to have to go in and try to take seriously people who are telling me this absolute bilge, nonsense. But listen to them seriously, because after all they're intelligent people. to understand why they would say such nonsense. And I wrote a book which now is called Out of the Labyrinth, which is one of my most important books. But the purpose of that book is to show that, yes, everything is relative, but relative to something. Relativity in Einstein's theory was relative to the speed of light. And we have to understand that all relativity, yes, moral values are relative, but in this sense, that if Jesus Christ or Mahatma Gandhi or some great soul were to wake up one fine morning and declare that I'm tired of serving humanity and I'm tired of serving God, I want to go out and become a millionaire. Wouldn't everybody in the world, including even materialists, say this man has fallen? But if a lazy fellow who never did anything got up out of his bed of rest one morning and said, I'm tired of resting, I'm going to become a millionaire, wouldn't even saints applaud? So you see how values are relative. Of course they're relative, but they're relative to something. There's a higher way you can go. There's something that becomes more fulfilling. And so I have shown in this book how all values have a relativity and a direction, that there is meaning in life, that the teaching of Darwin is not a false teaching, it's fine. But it doesn't give you the reason people want to advance. Evolution may be an accident, but there's a force behind it. There is the divine power in every atom, every center of cosmic space, wanting to become more conscious, wanting to become more evolved. And this really explains evolution. And all that Darwin gave us was the mechanics of it. But there is something deeper in it. And so the whole book, I really am very happy with that book, even now after 40 years or whatever, because I know that there is meaning in life. Well, I think that the time has come for us to offer an educational system which gives this meaning. We have to teach children. Children are flooded with facts, but that doesn't make you wise. We have to understand that wisdom is not knowing lots of things. In fact, in my new book, which I launched yesterday, I have a chapter. The book is Religion in the New Age, and there's a chapter there, why I left college. I had only 6 months to go to finish it. I just thought this is absolutely useless information. I don't want anything to do with it. And I found that actually by intuition and different things, I was able to do things. For example, I did take a course on music composition. And I never went to class, and I never did an assignment. I just thought this is a waste of time. I'm never going to be a composer. Well, I was wrong in that. But I remember when the students were all going into the exam and sitting down to take it, I was sitting on the steps of that same building, hastily going through my book like this, looking for the bold-faced letters that would tell certain rules, and that's all I had to go on when I took that exam. And then they asked me to give a melody in the exam, give a melody for a figured bass. And all of a sudden, this beautiful oriental melody came into my mind. And I wrote it down, and the professor was so pleased with that melody, he gave me a decent grade. But I have never thought in terms of, do I want the melody to go this way or this way? The ego is a very tricky customer. It's a very dangerous thing. The ego can confuse you as much as it can enlighten you. But if you open yourself to intuition, if you open yourself to guidance, I have found again and again that if I have a song I want to write, I say I want the song to say this and this and this and this. Then I say, give me a melody. Instantly it's there. I've never had any trouble with it. Well, that's a level of understanding that we need to teach children. They need to, among other things, and a very important thing, they need to have ideals. They need to feel that there is nobility in life. They need to have, there's a very interesting thing. I took it from Rudolf Steiner, but I refined it in my system. of education for life. And when you were saying that I'm the author of Education for Life, I am in a sense, but I based it on what my guru did. So you have to really say he's the author, although I'm the secretary. And in this system, the thing, I said the first 6 years, and it makes sense too. Steiner had that idea, but I sort of changed it in certain ways. I said the first 6 years, a child has come into this body and he needs to learn how to use his body. You see little children, 5 to 3 years old, running and falling over, and they have to learn to get control over their bodies. And so for the first 6 years, you need to teach them in a more physical way, learning how to control, how to use them well. Then the next 6 years, this is when you see what we have is our feeling nature, our physical nature, our wills in nature, and our intellect. And the second 6 years are more toward developing the emotional side. And this is when children are open to being given ideals. And so in our schools, and this is the main group we deal with, we try to help them to understand things from a point of ideals. Give them noble stories of people to look up to. They can absorb those things better at that age. They don't need a lot of facts. I remember my own childhood, and I based it a lot on that too. Because I remembered that's what I was open for then. And I used to love to read stories of inspiring heroes and people of noble nature and people who would forgive and so on. This is the age when you can get children to really become open to ideals. If you give them facts, you have to give them some. And I want to emphasize this point because it's extremely important. Naturally, parents will want their children to be able to grow up and take good jobs and be competitive in the world. Well, I can tell you this much, that when our children graduate or move on because their parents have moved or whatever from our schools to other schools, they always come out on top. In tests, nationwide tests, they come out in the 5 top percentile. And learning these things has not, in other words, made them dull to facts, it's made them more open to facts. And if you can present facts in an interesting way, it's much more, it'll sink much deeper than if you just give them as facts. And so to inspire children, to make them want to do these things, is very important. Too much of education is based on trying to sort of get the children out of the teacher's hair by let him have a good time. And they play games with them and so on. That, you know, when I was in school, I noticed one thing. The serious teachers were the ones we all respected. Those who tried to win us by playing and laughing and so on, well, we may have laughed, but we didn't take them seriously. So those serious teachers were a very good model for me in thinking about this. Our teachers are serious. We don't try to teach children just games. That's an important part of life. But we are very interested in helping them want to grow. Ideally, spiritually, all other ways. Many parents don't want their children to learn about spiritual things because they think it's unrealistic. Well, we give them spiritual things in such a way that they can take it because we show them how they work. For example, and a very good example was Nitai, who started our school in Ananda in a village in about 1970 or so. And Nitai, one time the children, it was the first snowfall, and the children made snowballs and were throwing them at each other. And the little children were helpless in this, and they started crying. And later the children all cooperated and built a snowman. This was their idea. But then Nitai called them together and he said, well, which did you enjoy more? And they all said, we enjoyed making a snowman more. Well, why did you enjoy the snowman more? Because we worked together. And they had seen that the little children were crying because they'd been hit by snowballs and couldn't do it back properly and so on. And so with this expression, anytime we have an opportunity to bring the children a sense of values, why this, why that, they respond. Little children are a lot smarter than most people think they are. They just aren't given the chance to show it. Not only that, let's face it, it's a part of their game. They know they can get the better of you by that. Anyway, the thing is that when we teach them ideals, this is what we come to. Then the next thing that needs to be developed is your willpower. And we all know about teenage rebellion. This is the time when children reach the age of 12, 13, they begin to think more in terms of testing the ground, testing their parents to see if they can get away with it, testing their friends and so on. Willpower is what they develop. So at that time, it's very important, and I think that it would be an excellent thing. In many primitive societies, they have rites of passage. Usually it's for boys, but it could be for girls too. When helping them to prepare for becoming adults, obviously the most important thing at that age is teaching them how to use sex properly, how to not abuse it, how it can be harmful to you, and so on. Well, this rite of passage would be a very good thing, and I have tried to recommend it to our schools, and more they're sort of like birds zeroing in and coming to my position, but I haven't yet succeeded, and I hope we do. I think it's a wonderful thing for them to have that initiation at that age, to even take a pledge at that age, to live in a certain way. I think that at that age of willpower, children are ready for a test of their will. And then you come to the ages of 18 to 24. And an ideal system in society would be not to turn children loose until they've passed the age of 24. Because those are the ages of intellect. And it's when children in college like to sit around over coffee cups and discuss life and what does it mean and so on. I did it, and I think many people do. And when you've developed your physical coordination, your emotional idealism, and learn to control your emotions, not to control them in the sense of suppressing them, but learning how to direct them in a wholesome way, learning how to use your willpower for your own good and not for damaging yourself and others, and learning how to use your intellect wisely. These are, I think, when you've got that, then you've got somebody who's really ready for life. And our school system, which teaches this, I would like to see it everywhere. Because they teach them facts and facts and facts until they're just coming out of their ears. We need to teach children how to live right. You know, in America, and I presume in India and in all countries, I don't know, but it's a natural thing when a factory is not working well to send in an efficiency expert. And he can see what will make the factory work, the flow of work should go this way, not that way. And all this educational system can also be called an efficiency expert kind of training. What works? Facts don't necessarily work. With a minimum of facts, you can gain the maximum for results. So it doesn't matter whether William invaded England, the conqueror invaded England in 1066 or whatever. It's not that important. But teachers make it terribly important. The important thing really is, what can you do with this information? How can it help you to grow? This is why I left college, because it wasn't teaching me what I wanted to learn. I have to say that I began my education the day I left college. Then it's not that I didn't want to learn, but I wanted to learn useful knowledge and learn it in a useful way. And I found that many times by backing off from something and just sort of feeling it, and this is where the intuition comes in, the heart quality. It's very important to develop your heart quality in the right way. Most people, most children, they just throw tantrums, they get all upset and so on. They need to be shown that this is not going to help you as a human being. They need to understand that if they can have their emotions calm, if they can listen to somebody and don't get all excited or upset, but hear them and try to understand from a calm center. So many things they can be taught that can really make human beings out of them. And this is desperately needed in society today. Why again all these suicides? Because children aren't getting any sense of direction. I think that the most important thing, in some ways, that I have done is to start these schools. And we have seen the results of them. We've had schools now for 40 years. That's a long time, enough time to prove that what you're doing works. I know somebody came, because it ties in also with the Ananda communities, and somebody came to me years ago, and after visiting Ananda, he said, "You have some wonderful people here." I said, "You know, if you see one or two people like that, you can say they're wonderful people. But if you see everybody like that, and you do, you have to attribute it to what they're doing." So the children who have grown out of our schools, they always become school leaders wherever they are. They always become successful. I don't know of a case where they've failed. And they're an extraordinary bunch of kids, an extraordinary bunch of adults. And this is the best proof of it all. The reason I invited Pat Kirby to come to Ananda was because she had read my Education for Life and was very much moved by it. And it is what the world needs. So let's get behind this school. It'll be the first of what I hope will be many thousands of such schools, not run by governments, run by people who are understanding, who are spiritually inclined, who want high ideals. And mind you, when you have a life without God, you have a body without a brain. It's only when you have an ideal, a direction, a high purpose in life that you can really accomplish everything well. And that means in every field of life. Cooking. You know, it seems like an absurd thing, but when you have that right feeling, your food will taste good. Why is mother's cooking so good? Because she loves her family and wants to cook well for it. Everybody says mother's cooking's the best. Why? For that reason. Everything that you do, if you can put heart into it, not just mind. You know, in our communities, we have two rules, basically. People are more important than things. This is what we have in our schools, too. Children are more important than the system. We adjust the system for the needs of the individual. And the next thing is, yada dharmas tata jaya. Where there is right action, there is victory. And when children can be taught that, you'll get away from these businessmen who are only thinking that money is this proof of their success. What you want in life is not money. What you want in life is happiness. And when children can understand that that is my goal and not money, they will have the money they need. They may not become millionaires, but they will have the money they need. We teach children how to find happiness. We teach them how to become calm, well-adjusted human beings. This is what education should teach children. And the facts that they learn, they will be able to absorb much better once they have got their minds calm and learned how to concentrate. So everything that we teach is a desperate need in India. When I was in hospital a few years ago, I had double pneumonia. I suppose I was near dying. Many people with double pneumonia do die. And a doctor came into my room and he said, "Sir, can you help me?" Well, you know, when you're suffering double pneumonia, the natural thing of a doctor is to say, "What can I do for you?" He said, "Can you help me?" So I struggled to the surface of consciousness and said, "Well, what do you want?" And he said, "Well, I have a son in college in Canada, and I have many financial obligations, and how can I succeed in life? How can I meet all my financial needs and everything, and be completely dharmic?" And I said to him, I have found in my life that by placing Dharma above everything, I have always come out on top. The trouble is I was practically unconscious, and I was not a good advertisement for success. And so he didn't listen to me. And Leela, who cooks for me, came to my hospital the next day and brought me my lunch. And then Keshava, who's here, he came that afternoon, and Leela went to make my dinner. And I said, Keshava, get a pen and paper and let me write. And I dictated the whole first, and where's Keshava? Yeah, what was the first one? The introduction, wasn't it?
Yes, all of the chapters.
And no, that was next. I did the introduction. And then I decided on a course that would be 26 lessons, each one 2 weeks. And so I somehow came up with all 26 subjects, and I spent the next year and a half writing that course. It's called Material Success and Happiness Through Yoga Principles. And it's a wonderful course, it really is. But I used example after example, how when you place Dharma first, when you place imagination first, when you bring your feelings into it, and try to use your feelings and your intuition. Well, I covered all 26 lessons, and the last lesson was the longest. I thought I'd surely lose steam somewhere along the way, but they got longer and longer until the last lesson was not only the longest, but the best. So I do urge you all to learn that, but these are principles that we also teach the children, how to be successful in this world in a dharmic way. And I believe that these schools can change the face of India. Too many people in India are willing to cut corners on Dharma. Too many people in India are willing to tell lies and do other things just to be successful. India should be, and in a way will always be, but right now is not that much, the guru of the world. India has, more than any other country, this Dharma, and you have to fulfill this Dharma. So therefore, although America too is dharmic basically, although not always, I think that India, if we can help to change the face of India, this is what I am trying to do with our communities. I'm starting one near Pune in the little village of Watunde. I'm trying to get it started, but I hope that the time will come when our communities, when people will join together to live. What could be a better thing than having people living a spiritual life together and showing the world that it works? People will always come back and say, well, it doesn't work. Well, we show them that it does work. We have now finished our 40th anniversary, and we're showing great success. This is a proof. It's time to spread this teaching everywhere, to help people all over the world to know that yata dhamma tata jaya, and people are more important than things. And when you have an office force, all of whom you think of as people, not just statistics, and you help them, we don't give. If there's a job to be done, and in a community like this, there will be jobs to be done that are good for anybody. We don't do the job. We don't say you've got to do it. We think of their needs first. And the thing is that we flower. You think, well, that's a good recipe for failure. It is not. It works. We found that by living together with people of higher ideals, not just living together because there's a port nearby, not just living together because there's farmland nearby, living together because they share their ideals. They say in the Shastras that one moon gives more light than all the stars. One person of spiritual quality can give more power and more example than thousands of others. But the truth is that if we had all the members of Ananda, each one going to a different city and taking a job there, people would say, well, here's a very peaceful person, he's a nice person to be around, but he wouldn't have much effect on them. He would have the effect of people saying, well, why are you so peaceful? And he says, because I meditate, and think of God and so on. They say, well, it's probably because you eat bread for breakfast. Well, when you see a group of people living together and all expressing these qualities, then you make a statement. When you have a school where all the students are taught this and they come out with this understanding, and then that makes an impression. People everywhere see this example. You don't see it from one person, two people scattered here and there. There always in any society be a few peaceful and sattvic people. But when you see many different people from many different walks of life, many different countries, all coming together and sharing these ideals and showing that it works on every level, then you begin to become impressed. And so I would say that this school that we're starting here now is perhaps one of the most important things happening in India today. I'm very eager to see it work. It's not just an ordinary school, but if your children come here, they will go out being not just educated, but educated for life, prepared to live in this world in a true and noble way. Not very solid on my
Babaji, Simran has something.
Thank you.
Babaji, would you lead us in a prayer and a blessing for the school?
Blessing.
I'll be very glad to. Can you hear me here? You pray. Let us pray together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Lahiri Mahasaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, Paramhansa Yogananda, great saints of all religions, we lay the flowers of our devotion gently at your feet. Divine Mother, may this school flourish. May this school flourish with your love and with the desire to help people everywhere to find divine love in the hearts of all. Peace.
Can I ask the choir to come down now before closure song?
What is this?
We'll have the choir come down.
Yes, shall I sit here or down where I can
For
walk?
anyone that's here.
I'll sit here behind you.